The lights of New Geneva Station sparkled like stars against the black void of space. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at the massive structure, bringing traders, diplomats, and travelers from across the galaxy. The station was a symbol of peace and cooperation, a place where different species could meet and do business under the protection of the Galactic Council. Marcus Chen pressed his small face against the observation deck's transparent aluminum window, watching the ships come and go. At 8 years old, everything about the station amazed him. The curved corridors that twisted in impossible directions, the alien vendors selling glowing fruits that sang when you touched them, the holographic displays that showed distant worlds he dreamed of visiting someday. His parents were somewhere in the trade district, negotiating a contract for rare earth minerals. Marcus had grown bored of the adult talk and wandered off to explore, promising to stay in the safe areas his mother had shown him. The observation deck was one of those places, a wide circular room with windows on all sides where visitors could watch the endless dance of spacecraft. Marcus chased a holographic butterfly that fluttered around the room, part of an educational display about Earth insects. The projection moved like a real butterfly, and Marcus giggled as he tried to catch it with his hands. The butterfly led him around benches and information kiosks, always staying just out of reach. Commander Zexthai of the Velkari Empire stood near the central information pillar, reviewing patrol reports on her tablet. She was tall and imposing, with dark chitinous armor covering her body and forearms that ended in sharp claws. Her compound eyes could see in multiple directions at once, a trait that made the Velkari excellent guards and soldiers. The Velkari believed they were superior to most other species. Their homeworld was a paradise of perfect climate and abundant resources. They had never faced the struggles that shaped other races. To them, humans were Deathworlders, primitive creatures from a savage planet who had no business mixing with civilized society. Marcus was so focused on the butterfly that he did not see Commander Zexthai until it was too late. He bumped into her armored leg while reaching for the hologram, his small body bouncing off the hard surface. Zexthai looked down at the human child with disgust. In Velkari culture, touching another person without permission was a serious offense. When done by an inferior species, it was considered assault. The fact that it was an accident meant nothing to her. "Filthy Deathworlder," she hissed in her native language, then switched to standard Galactic. "You dare touch a Velkari officer?" Marcus looked up at the towering alien, confusion and fear in his brown eyes. "I'm sorry," he said in his small voice. "I didn't mean to bump into you. I was trying to catch the butterfly." Zexthai's anger grew at what she saw as the child's insolence. How dare this primitive creature speak to her as if they were equals? She reached for the plasma baton on her belt, a weapon designed to incapacitate adult criminals during riots. "You will learn respect. Deathworlder spawn," she snarled. The baton hummed to life, electricity crackling along its length. Other beings in the observation deck began to notice the confrontation. Some moved away, not wanting to get involved. Others pulled out their communication devices to record what was happening. Marcus took a step back, scared by the angry alien and the dangerous weapon in her hands. "Please," I said I was sorry. "I didn't mean it." But Zexthai was beyond reason. Years of believing in Velkari superiority had made her think that humans needed to be taught their place. She raised the plasma baton high above her head and brought it down with the full force of her enhanced strength. The weapon struck Marcus in the chest with a sound like thunder. Electric energy coursed through his small body as he was lifted off his feet and thrown across the room. He hit the far wall with a horrible crack that echoed through the observation deck. Screams filled the air as witnesses realized what they had just seen. A Galactic Council officer had just used a military weapon on a human child. Marcus lay crumpled against the wall, his body twisted at an unnatural angle, blood trickling from his mouth. Dr. Sarah Chen was examining mineral samples in the trade district when her communicator began buzzing frantically. She ignored it at first, focused on the negotiations that could secure her family's future, but the calls kept coming and finally she answered. "Dr. Chen, this is station security. You need to come to Medical Bay 7 immediately. There's been an incident involving your son." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She dropped the samples and ran through the station corridors, her husband David close behind. They found a crowd gathered outside the medical bay, their faces showing shock and anger. Inside, Marcus lay on a biobed surrounded by doctors from 3 different species. Machines beeped and whirred as they worked to save his life. A human doctor turned to Sarah as she entered, his face grim. "Mrs. Chen, your son has suffered severe trauma to his spinal cord. We've stabilized him, but the damage is extensive. I won't lie to you, he may never walk again." Sarah felt the world spinning around her. She grabbed the doctor's arm, her voice barely a whisper. "What happened to him?" "A Velkari officer struck him with a plasma baton. The security footage shows everything. Your son accidentally bumped into her and she attacked him." David Chen stepped forward, his face pale with shock. "A council officer did this. To our boy?" The doctor nodded sadly. "Commander Zexthai has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. I'm sorry, but that's all I know." Sarah looked down at her unconscious son, machines breathing for him and monitoring his broken body. Marcus looked so small and fragile on the medical bed. A child who had done nothing wrong except chase a holographic butterfly. "Where is she?" Sarah asked, her voice growing hard. "Where's the officer who did this?" "Mrs. Chen, please let the authorities handle this. The Galactic Council has procedures for these situations." But Sarah was no longer listening. She was remembering her years as a colonial marine, fighting in the border wars against raiders and pirates. She was thinking about the weapons training that had kept her alive in a dozen battles. Most of all, she was thinking about justice. News of the incident spread quickly through the station's human population. Traders, engineers, miners, and transport crews gathered in small groups, their conversations hushed but intense. Many of them had children of their own. All of them understood what it meant when someone hurt a human child. Commander Zexthai filed her report from the security office, showing no remorse for her actions. To her, she had simply enforced proper respect for Velkari authority. The human spawn had learned a valuable lesson about its place in civilized society. She did not notice the human maintenance worker who walked past her office. She did not see the way he spoke quietly into his communicator. She had no idea that messages were already spreading through hidden networks, carrying news of what had happened to Marcus Chen. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders. They were about to discover that some lessons came with a terrible price. As Marcus fought for his life in the medical bay, and his parents held vigil by his bedside, other humans throughout the station were making plans. They spoke in codes learned in military service, using hand signals that meant nothing to alien observers. The hunt was about to begin. 3 days had passed since the attack on Marcus Chen, and the boy still lay unconscious in the medical bay. Machines kept him alive while doctors from multiple species worked around the clock to repair the damage. The news had spread beyond New Geneva Station, reaching human colonies and settlements across the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen sat beside her son's bed, holding his small hand in hers. She had not slept since the incident, refusing to leave Marcus's side. Her husband David brought her food that she barely touched, and coffee that had long gone cold. "The spinal damage is severe," Dr. Martinez explained during his morning rounds. "We've managed to stabilize the vertebrae, but the neural pathways were disrupted by the plasma discharge. Even if Marcus wakes up, he may never walk again." Sarah squeezed her son's hand tighter. "When he wakes up," she corrected. "Not if, when." Dr. Martinez nodded, understanding the mother's need for hope. He had children of his own and could not imagine what Sarah was going through. A soft chime indicated someone entering the medical bay. Ambassador Kethra slithered into the room, her serpentine body moving with fluid grace. The Sectar diplomat's scales shimmered in the artificial light as she approached Marcus's bed. "Dr. Chen, I am deeply sorry for what happened to your son," Kethra said, her forked tongue tasting the air. "The Galactic Council is taking this matter very seriously." Sarah looked up at the alien diplomat, her eyes red from exhaustion and grief. "What's being done about Commander Zexthai? She has been placed on administrative leave while we conduct a full investigation. I assure you that justice will be served according to Council protocols." "Protocols?" David Chen stepped forward, anger in his voice. "She nearly killed our son with a military weapon. What protocols are needed? We have security footage of the entire incident." Ambassador Kethra's tail coiled nervously. "Mr. Chen, I understand your frustration, but we must consider cultural differences. The Velkari have strict customs regarding physical contact. From Commander Zexthai's perspective, your son initiated unwanted contact." Sarah stood up slowly, her marine training evident in her controlled movements. "Are you seriously suggesting that an 8-year-old child deserved to be attacked with a plasma baton?" Of course not, Kethra replied quickly. But we must handle this situation delicately. The Velkari Empire is a founding member of the Council. Any action we take must consider the broader implications for galactic peace. Galactic peace, Sarah repeated, her voice growing dangerous. What about justice for my son? The Council is prepared to offer compensation and ensure that Commander Zexathai receives additional cultural sensitivity training. We're also arranging for the best medical care for Marcus at no cost to your family. David slammed his fist against the wall. Training? You want to give her training? She used a weapon designed for riot control on a child. Ambassador Kethra raised her hands in a calming gesture. Please understand, the Velkari military has different protocols than human forces. What seems excessive to you might be standard procedure in their culture. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. The same feeling she had experienced in combat when she realized the enemy was not going to surrender. That force would be the only language they understood. Get out, she said quietly. Dr. Chen, please be reasonable. Get out of here before I do something that will require cultural sensitivity training. Ambassador Kethra looked between Sarah and David, recognizing the threat in the human woman's voice. She left the medical bay without another word, her scales rustling against the floor. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of station security, watched the diplomat leave from her office across the corridor. She had been monitoring the situation closely, not just as a security officer but as a human who understood what was happening beneath the surface. Strange reports had been coming in since the attack. Ships arriving and departing with no cargo manifests, encrypted communications spiking throughout the human quarters, maintenance workers appearing in areas they had no business being in, small gatherings in the lower levels that dispersed when security approached. Elena pulled up the station's personnel files, filtering for humans with military backgrounds. The list was longer than she expected. Former colonial Marines, Navy veterans, ex-Special Forces operators who now worked as traders, engineers, and transport pilots. New Geneva Station had become home to hundreds of humans who knew how to fight. She switched to the communication logs, looking for patterns in the encrypted traffic. The signals were using old military codes, the kind taught to special operations units during the border wars. Most aliens would dismiss them as routine business chatter, but Elena recognized the signatures. Someone was organizing the humans. Someone with serious military experience. In the lower levels of the station, former Staff Sergeant Mike Torres met with a small group in a maintenance bay. They spoke in low voices, using hand signals to supplement their conversation. The men and women gathered around him had served in different units on different worlds, but they all shared the same grim expression. "How's the boy?" asked Jenny Walsh, a former Navy medic who now ran a shipping company. "Still unconscious. Doc says he may never walk again." Torres studied the faces around him. Sarah Chen is holding up, but she's ready to tear that Velkari apart with her bare hands. Any word from the Council? This from Carlos Reeves, who had lost 3 fingers fighting pirates near the Outer Rim. They're calling it a cultural misunderstanding. Zexthai gets sensitivity training and a transfer to a nice desk job. The group exchanged looks. They had all seen how alien justice worked when humans were the victims. Delays, excuses, and eventually the whole thing would be forgotten. "So what's the plan?" Jenny asked. Torres pulled out a tablet and showed them a star chart. Red dots marked Velkari installations across the sector. Military bases, research stations, mining colonies. We're going to teach them why you don't hurt human children. The planning took place in secret, using networks that had been built during years of trade and travel. Former soldiers working as civilian contractors, ship captains who had served in the military, engineers who knew how to modify civilian vessels for other purposes. Equipment began moving through the station in small quantities. Power cells that could be used for weapons, communication gear that looked like standard trade equipment, chemicals that had legitimate industrial uses but could be combined for other purposes. Ambassador Kethra filed her report with the Council, recommending that the matter be resolved quietly. The humans were upset, which was understandable, but they would accept the Council's decision. They always had before. She did not notice the human technician who serviced her office equipment. She did not see him plant the tiny device that would monitor all her communications. The humans had always been so cooperative, so willing to work within the system. This time would be different. Sarah Chen returned to her son's bedside after the meeting with Ambassador Kethra. Marcus looked so small and fragile, connected to machines that kept him alive. She brushed his dark hair away from his forehead and whispered to him, "I'm sorry, baby. Mommy tried to do things the right way. But sometimes the right way doesn't work." She pulled out her old military communicator, a device she had kept as a memento of her service. After a moment's hesitation, she activated it and sent a message using codes she had hoped never to use again. Throughout the galaxy, other devices chimed softly as the message was received and passed along. Former colonial Marines working as asteroid miners, ex-Navy pilots running cargo ships, Special Forces veterans who had become traders and explorers. The message was simple. Our child has been hurt. Justice denied. Time to show them who we really are. The response was immediate and unanimous. Understood. Standing by. The hunt was about to begin, and the galaxy would learn why humans were called Deathworlders. 2 weeks after the attack on Marcus Chen, the first disappearance occurred. Commander Zexthai was being transferred to a comfortable administrative position on Velkar Prime, just as Ambassador Kethra had promised. Her transport ship, the Rigid Harmony, departed New Geneva Station with a crew of 12 and an escort of 2 fighters. The ship never reached its destination. Search teams found the Rigid Harmony drifting in empty space 3 days later. The escort fighters were gone, their pilot's fate unknown. Inside the transport, they discovered 11 bodies. The entire crew except for Zexthai herself. Each had been killed with precise efficiency. Their lives ended by someone who knew exactly how to disable Velkari physiology. Commander Zexthai was simply gone. The Velkari Navy launched an immediate investigation, but they found no trace of the attackers. No debris from attacking ships, no energy signatures from weapons fire. The Rigid Harmony's log showed nothing unusual until the moment the crew started dying. Admiral Velthak of the Velkari 4th Fleet studied the reports with growing unease. How does an entire ship crew die without any sign of combat? Where are the escape pods? Where is Commander Zexthai? Unknown, sir, replied his aide. The bodies show signs of close-quarters combat, but our people were found in different parts of the ship. Someone moved through that vessel like a ghost. 3 days later, Captain Zendar disappeared from a Velkari mining station in the Altair system. Zendar had been one of the loudest voices supporting Zexthai's actions, claiming that Deathworlders needed to learn respect for superior species. He vanished from his private quarters during the night shift, leaving behind no signs of struggle. The pattern continued across Velkari space. Officers who had publicly supported the attack on Marcus Chen began disappearing. Some vanished from secure facilities. Others were taken from moving vehicles. A few simply never returned from routine patrols. The Velkari government demanded action from the Galactic Council, but their investigators found nothing. No human ships had been detected near any of the incidents. No human personnel had been in the area during the disappearances. It was as if the victims had simply evaporated. Colonel Jack Morrison sat in what had once been a Velkari detention facility on the moon of Kepler 438b. The guards were now his prisoners, locked in the same cells they had used to hold captured pirates and smugglers. He looked into the camera that would broadcast his message across the galaxy. Morrison was old for a Special Forces operator, his hair gray, and his face marked by years of combat. But his eyes still held the cold focus that had made him legendary during the border wars. Behind him, caged Velkari officers stared at their captors with fear and confusion. "My name is Colonel Jack Morrison, formerly of the Human Colonial Marines," he said to the camera. 2 weeks ago, one of your kind attacked a human child with a military weapon. The Galactic Council called it a cultural misunderstanding. Morrison stepped closer to the camera, his voice growing harder. "Let me explain human culture to you. We protect our children. When someone hurts our children, we hunt them down. When someone protects those who hurt our children, we hunt them too." He gestured to the caged Velkari behind him. These are the officers who supported the attack on Marcus Chen. They thought Deathworlders were too primitive to understand justice. They're about to learn what justice means to humans. The broadcast ended abruptly, but copies spread throughout the galactic networks faster than the Council could suppress them. Within hours, every species in known space had seen Morrison's message. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the broadcast from her office on New Geneva Station. She had suspected something was building, but even she had underestimated the scope of what was happening. The disappearances were not random acts of revenge. They were part of a coordinated campaign. She pulled up shipping records and cross-referenced them with the missing Velkari officers. A pattern emerged that chilled her blood. Human cargo ships had been in the area of several disappearances, but they had filed flight plans for completely different destinations. Somehow, the humans were moving through space without being tracked. Elena realized that everything she thought she knew about human civilian operations was wrong. The traders and transport captains were not just former military. They were still military, operating under cover of civilian jobs. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the crisis. Representatives from 24 species demanded action against the human terrorists, but their military advisors painted a grim picture. Admiral Kethvar of the Council Defense Fleet studied the tactical reports with growing alarm. They're not behaving like civilians or even like regular military units. These operations show the hallmarks of deep cover special forces. Impossible, declared Representative Velthak. Humans are traders and miners. They don't have the capability for operations like this. With respect, sir, that's exactly what they want us to think. Admiral Kethvar brought up a holographic display showing human shipping routes. Look at this data. Human vessels have been present near every major world for the past 50 years. They've mapped our defenses, learned our schedules, identified our key personnel. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had not just been trading, they had been preparing. Ambassador Kethra slithered forward, her scales pale with fear. You're suggesting that humanity has been planning for war? Not war, Admiral Kethvar corrected. Something worse. They've been planning for the hunt. The Zephyrian Collective was the first to break ranks. They had cheated human corporations out of mining rights in their space, confident that the Deathworlders would accept whatever compensation the Council offered. Now they were reconsidering their position. Perhaps we should review our interactions with humanity, suggested Collective Speaker Zephyra, in the interest of preventing further incidents. Other species began voicing similar concerns. The Altarian Federation remembered the accidents that had befallen human exploration teams in contested systems. The Regelian Union recalled trade disputes that had been resolved in their favor through council mediation. Each species began to wonder, were they also being hunted? The disappearances continued with clockwork precision. Velkari officers vanished from their homes, their workplaces, their recreational facilities. The hunters seemed to know everything about their targets, their schedules, their security arrangements, their personal habits. Captain Velsera was taken from her private yacht while traveling to a family gathering. The yacht was found intact, its crew unconscious but unharmed. Security footage showed nothing except the captain walking to her quarters and never emerging. Major Zekthor disappeared from the middle of a crowded restaurant on Velkar Prime. One moment he was eating dinner with friends. The next moment his chair was empty. The restaurant's patrons reported seeing nothing unusual. The pattern was always the same, precise, surgical, invisible. The humans were not just hunting. They were sending a message to anyone who might think about harming their children in the future. On New Geneva Station, Sarah Chen maintained her vigil beside Marcus's bed. Her son had awakened twice in the past week, but the spinal damage was worse than the doctors had initially thought. Even with the best medical technology available, Marcus would likely never walk again. Sarah had been approached by representatives from several species, offering advanced healing technologies in exchange for calling off the hunters. She had politely declined each offer, explaining that the matter was no longer in her hands. The hunters are not following my orders, she told Ambassador Kethra during one visit. They're following their conscience. Dr. Chen, surely you can contact them. Tell them that continued violence will only make things worse. Sarah looked at her sleeping son, so small and broken on the medical bed. You had your chance for justice, Ambassador. Now they're providing their own. Dr. Martinez brought news during his evening rounds. There's been a development with Marcus's treatment. A human medical team has arrived with some experimental equipment. They think they might be able to repair the spinal damage. Sarah looked up with hope for the first time in weeks. Who sent them? They wouldn't say. Just that they heard about Marcus and wanted to help. Sarah understood. The hunters were not just taking revenge. They were showing the galaxy what human civilization really meant. When one of their children was hurt, all of humanity responded. The hunt would continue until justice was done. And everyone in the galaxy was beginning to understand that human justice was very different from council justice. It was final. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours, and panic was spreading through the chamber like a virus. 53 Velkari officers had disappeared in the past month, along with 17 officials from other species who had publicly supported the cultural understanding approach to the Marcus Chen incident. Representative Velthak slammed his armored fist on the podium, his compound eyes blazing with fury. This terrorism cannot be allowed to continue. The humans are making a mockery of galactic law. Admiral Kethvar stood to address the assembly, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. The situation is worse than we initially thought. Our intelligence services have discovered evidence of a vast human network that has been operating for decades. The chamber fell silent as he activated a holographic display. It showed shipping routes, communication networks, and personnel records spanning the entire galaxy. We estimate that there are over 10,000 humans with military training currently working in civilian occupations throughout Council space. They have access to restricted areas, classified information, and strategic resources. In effect, humanity has placed a sleeper army among us. Representative Quillara of the Zephyrian Collective spoke up, her avian features pale with fear. You're saying they've been planning this for decades? Not planning for this specific incident, but preparing for any situation where they might need to operate outside official channels. The humans call it redundancy. We call it terrifying. Ambassador Kethra coiled nervously on her platform. What about their official military? Surely the human colonial government can order them to stop. Admiral Kethvar's expression grew grim. That's another problem. We've been monitoring human military communications, and there's been complete radio silence from their high command. They're not ordering the hunters to stop, but they're not officially supporting them either. Plausible. Deniability, muttered Representative Korth of the Rigelian Union. His people had experience with such tactics from their own colonial expansion. Period. The Admiral nodded. Exactly. The humans can claim these are rogue elements acting without authorization, while their government quietly provides support through unofficial channels. The displays changed to show tactical analyses of the disappearances. Each incident had been planned and executed with surgical precision, leaving no evidence and no witnesses. The hunters moved like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing without a trace. How are they doing it? Demanded Representative Velthak. Our people are disappearing from secure facilities, from the middle of crowds, from ships in hyperspace. It's impossible. Admiral Kethvar highlighted several shipping records. Human cargo vessels have been retrofitted with equipment that doesn't appear on any manifest. We believe they're using some form of stealth technology, possibly combined with teleporter devices. Teleporters? Representative Quillara's feathers ruffled with alarm. That technology is highly restricted. How did humans acquire it? We don't know, but the implications are disturbing. If they can teleport personnel onto our ships and stations undetected, nowhere is safe. The chamber erupted in frightened chatter as representatives realized the scope of the threat. The humans were not just capable of individual assassination. They could potentially strike at any target. Anywhere in the galaxy. Speaker Thondara called for order, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. What recommendations do our military advisors have for dealing with this crisis? Admiral Kethvar looked uncomfortable. Truthfully, Speaker, we're not sure how to proceed. Traditional military responses don't work against an enemy that can appear and disappear at will. We could declare martial law in Velkari space, but that would only push them deeper underground. What about negotiations? Suggested Representative Korth. Perhaps we could reach some accommodation with the humans. I've already tried, Ambassador Kethra replied. Dr. Chen refuses to call off the hunters. She claims they're acting independently. Because they are, came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Every head turned to see a human woman walking calmly down the aisle between the representative platforms. She was middle-aged, wearing simple civilian clothes, and showed no fear despite being surrounded by dozens of species who now viewed humanity as a threat. Security. Speaker Thondara's voice rang out, but the human woman held up a hand. I'm Ambassador Lisa Park, representing the human colonial government. I have diplomatic immunity and the right to address this assembly. Ambassador Park walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the frightened faces staring down at her. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast room. You want to know why the hunters won't stop? It's because you betrayed every principle of justice when you protected the being who attacked Marcus Chen. You taught humanity that the Council's word is worthless when human lives are at stake. Representative Velthak rose from his platform. The Council follows established protocols. We cannot make exceptions based on emotional responses. Ambassador Park turned to face him, her expression cold. Emotional responses? An 8-year-old boy was nearly killed by one of your officers. His spine was shattered by a weapon designed for riot control. And your response was to give his attacker sensitivity training. Cultural differences must be considered. No. Park's voice cut through his protest like a blade. There are no cultural differences that justify attacking a child. You chose to protect a monster and now you're learning the consequences. Speaker Thandara leaned forward. Ambassador Park, surely your government can order these criminals to surrender to council justice. Park laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Council justice? You mean the same justice that protected Commander Zexthai? The same justice that would have given her a comfortable retirement after nearly murdering a child? She gestured to the display still showing the human network. You're looking at this all wrong. You think these are terrorists or criminals? They're not. They're parents. They're people who understand that sometimes the system fails, and when it does, you have to take care of things yourself. This is chaos, protested Representative Quilara. If everyone takes justice into their own hands, civilization will collapse. Your civilization was already collapsed, Park replied. You just didn't realize it yet. A system that protects child abusers isn't civilized, it's corrupt. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward. Ambassador, 3 battle groups are standing by to hunt down these fugitives. If your government doesn't act, we will. Park smiled, and for the first time there was genuine amusement in her expression. Admiral, you've been hunting them for weeks. How's that working out for you? The Admiral's tentacles curled with embarrassment. Despite deploying massive resources, the Council Defense Fleet had not captured a single hunter. Worse, they had lost 2 scout ships whose crews had simply vanished while on patrol. The hunters are not impressed by your battle groups, Park continued. They've spent decades learning how you operate, how you think, how you protect yourselves. They know your weaknesses better than you do. She activated a personal hologram projector, showing images of human colonies throughout the galaxy. You see traders and miners and engineers. We see 10,000 veterans who chose civilian life but never forgot their training. You see cargo ships and passenger transports. We see a fleet that can strike anywhere without warning. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had not just been conducting business in council space. They had been conducting the longest reconnaissance operation in galactic history. What do you want? Speaker Thandara asked finally. Justice for Marcus Chen, Park replied simply. Real justice, not your bureaucratic nonsense. When that happens, the hunters will stand down. Commander Zexthai has already been punished according to council protocols. Commander Zexthai is already dead, Park interrupted. The hunters took her 3 weeks ago. They've been interrogating her, learning about other incidents, where humans were mistreated and the council looked the other way. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives realized that their attempts at negotiation had been meaningless. The object of the hunt was already gone, and the humans had been using her to gather intelligence about other potential targets. Ambassador Park waited for the noise to die down before continuing. The hunters found evidence of 17 other cases where humans were attacked, cheated, or murdered, and the council refused to provide justice. Those responsible for covering up those crimes are now targets as well. This is madness. Representative Velthak's voice cracked with panic. You're talking about war? No, Park said calmly. We're talking about accountability. For too long, you've treated humans as second-class citizens because we come from a dangerous world. You've cheated us, ignored us, and protected those who hurt us. That ends now. She began walking toward the chamber's exit, her message delivered. The hunters will continue their work until every person responsible for protecting child abusers is brought to justice. You can help by providing the evidence we need, or you can continue to obstruct and watch your people disappear one by one. As the heavy doors closed behind Ambassador Park, the Galactic Council was left to contemplate a terrifying new reality. The peaceful Deathworlders they had dismissed for so long were not peaceful at all. They had SIM. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was entering its third day when the unthinkable happened. Despite being held in the most secure facility in known space, surrounded by the combined fleets of 12 species, the council chambers were breached. It began quietly. The main doors sealed shut with a soft hiss, their security locks engaging with mechanical precision. Representatives looked around nervously as the chamber's lighting dimmed to emergency levels. Then the shadows began to move. Captain Sarah Chen walked out of what had appeared to be empty air, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. She carried a metallic case in one hand and wore the dress uniform of the human colonial Marines, her medals catching the dim light. Behind her, 43 human soldiers materialized from stealth fields, their weapons trained on the exits. "Distinguished representatives," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Thank you for gathering here today. You've saved us the trouble of hunting you down individually." Speaker Thondara's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. "How did you get in here? This facility is protected by quantum barriers and temporal shields." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. "We've been studying your security systems for 50 years. Did you really think we couldn't find a way through them when we needed to?" She walked to the center of the chamber, ignoring the weapons that several representatives were trying to draw. The human soldiers moved with fluid efficiency, disarming threats before they could fully develop. "I'm here to deliver something that was promised to you," Sarah continued, placing the metallic case on the central podium. "Justice for my son." With deliberate ceremony, she opened the case and lifted out Commander Zexthai's severed head. The Velkari's compound eyes stared sightlessly at the representatives who had protected her, her mandibles frozen in a final expression of terror. The chamber erupted in shouts of outrage and fear, but Sarah's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "My son will never walk again," she announced. "Marcus Chen was 8 years old when your precious Commander Zexthai decided to teach him respect with a plasma baton. He'll spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Because one of your kind thought a human child was beneath her notice, and she placed Zexthai's head on the podium where every representative could see it clearly. But Marcus is alive, which is more than can be said for the 74 individuals who hurt him and those who protected his attacker." Representative Velthak tried to stand, his armored legs shaking with fear. "This is barbarism. You cannot simply murder council officials." "Murder?" Sarah's laugh was cold and bitter. "We gave them trials, more than they gave Marcus. We presented evidence, heard their defense, and rendered judgment. They were found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced accordingly." Admiral Kethavar's tentacles writhed as he struggled to understand what was happening. "How many of you are there?" "How long have you been planning this?" "Long enough," Sarah replied. "There are enough of us. Did you think we would just accept whatever scraps of justice you chose to throw our way? Did you believe we would always turn the other cheek when you betrayed us?" She gestured to the soldiers surrounding the chamber. "Every human you see here volunteered for this mission. They all have children. They all understand what it means when someone hurts our young." Ambassador Kethra slithered forward, her scales pale with terror. "Dr. Chen, please be reasonable. The Council is prepared to offer substantial compensation for your son's injuries. We can provide the best medical care, access to advanced healing technologies." "Too late," Sarah interrupted. "You had your chance to do the right thing. Instead, you chose to protect a child abuser because she wore the right uniform. Now you get to see what happens when humans stop pretending to be civilized." Representative Quillara's feathers were ruffled with panic. "You're destroying everything we've built. The Council has maintained peace for 3 centuries. Your peace was built on the suffering of those too weak to fight back," Sarah replied. "You maintained order by ignoring injustice when it was convenient. That's not peace, that's just organized oppression." She activated a holographic display that showed the true scope of the human operation. Ships positions throughout the galaxy, personnel embedded in every major installation, weapons caches hidden on 1,000 worlds. For 70 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment, Sarah explained. Not because we wanted war, but because we knew eventually you would push us too far. Every trade route we mapped, every station we visited, every friendship we made, it was all preparation for the day when we would need to remind you what we're capable of. Speaker Thondara's voice cracked with desperation. "What do you want from us? How do we end this? It's already ending, Sarah replied. The hunters have completed their mission. Every person responsible for the Marcus Chen cover-up has been eliminated. Every official who has protected those who harmed humans has been removed from power. The accounts have been balanced. She looked around the chamber at the frightened faces staring down at her. But this is also a beginning. You're going to implement new protocols for dealing with crimes against humans. You're going to establish real oversight of your security forces. And you're going to remember that we are not your subjects. And if we refuse? Representative Velthak's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah's expression grew cold. Then you'll discover why we evolved on a death world. Marcus wasn't the first human child to be hurt by alien officials, and his case wasn't the first to be covered up. We have files on 637 similar incidents over the past century. Every one of them is now being investigated by human justice teams. The implications hit the representatives like a physical blow. The humans weren't just responding to one incident. They were conducting a comprehensive review of decades of abuse. You can cooperate with these investigations, Sarah continued, or you can try to obstruct them. But understand this, we are no longer asking for your permission. We are no longer working within your system. We are taking care of our own, and anyone who stands in our way will be removed. One of the human soldiers stepped forward and whispered something in Sarah's ear. She nodded and turned back to the representatives. I'm receiving word that the new protocols for human protection have been approved by every species government in the past hour. Apparently, your ambassadors are more practical than you are. She began walking toward the chamber's exit, her soldiers falling into formation around her. The ships surrounding this facility are standing down. Your security forces are being returned to you unharmed. This demonstration is concluded. Wait, Speaker Thondura called out. How do we know this is truly over? How do we know the hunters won't strike again? Sarah paused at the threshold and looked back. Because we got what we came for. Justice for Marcus and assurance that it won't happen again. Keep your end of the bargain and there will be no further problems. And if someone else hurts a human child? Representative Korth asked quietly. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Then you'll discover that this was the polite response. The humans vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind only Zexthai's severed head and a chamber full of shaken representatives. For several minutes no one spoke. Finally, Speaker Thondura found her voice. Motion to ratify the human protection protocols, she said shakily. Seconded, came voices from around the chamber. The vote was unanimous. 3 weeks later, Marcus Chen took his first steps in an advanced exoskeleton designed by human engineers. The device was a marvel of technology, more sophisticated than anything the Council's medical teams had been able to provide. It gave him full mobility and would grow with him as he developed. Sarah sat in the hospital room watching her son play with the other children, his mechanical legs allowing him to run and jump like any normal 8-year-old. The exoskeleton had been a gift from the hunters, their way of showing that human justice wasn't just about punishment. Dr. Martinez entered with a progress report. The integration is going perfectly. In a few months, Marcus won't even think about the machinery. It'll be as natural as breathing. Any word on the long-term prognosis? Sarah asked. Better than we dared hope. The human medical team that designed this system thinks they can eventually restore partial nerve function. He may not need the exoskeleton forever. Sarah smiled as she watched Marcus chase a holographic butterfly, his mechanical legs carrying him effortlessly around the play area. The butterfly was the same type he had been chasing when Zexthai attacked him, but now it held no fear for either of them. Mom, look, Marcus called out, executing a perfect jump that would have been impossible with his damaged spine. I can fly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy. Her son was whole again in all the ways that mattered. The hunters had given him back his future. Throughout the galaxy, new protocols were being implemented. Human children received special protection under Council law. Attacks on civilians were investigated by joint human-alien teams. The days of casual abuse and bureaucratic cover-ups were over. The Deathworlders had shown the galaxy what they were truly capable of, and everyone agreed. It was better when they pretended to.